Welcome to Mindful Life 75. It's a pleasure having you here. I'm your host, Nathan Springer. Who else would it be? And it is currently Friday the 13th. Yes, spooky stuff. Friday the 13th of May 2022. You know, I have to start to practice this every night. I have to practice which month we are in because generally that just doesn't stick in my head, and I say it every day and it just doesn't stick in my head which month we are currently in. All right, let me see. Now tonight I'm trying to do something different. Yes, it's a Friday night. I'm trying to do a little different here and see if I can start my face. Complete post details. Right, so what we're talking about tonight is, well, I saw the police had a response because what we spoke about was that last night where we spoke about the domestic violence happening and the 4 women that were murdered in Trinidad and Tobago within the span of 1 week. Just now filling in some details here. Yeah. Oh, young king, the girl is the one who started the altercation. Which girl? The girl is the one. Nathan, what would you do if you had a son who got into an altercation with a girl? The girl is the one who started the altercation. Well, I think the question you don't answer. The reason you don't answer my questions is because you're secretly a member of SORT. Jeremy Francis, I am not secretly a member of SORT. I am not a police. No, stop it. But what would I do if I had a son and he got into an altercation with a female and the female was the one who started it? I guess it's according... Oh, and he is the only one who got suspended though? Well, I'll have to get to the bottom of this. How bad was the altercation? Was his reaction warranted? Did he overdo it? I mean, if I have a son and he is 16 years and getting into the prime of his young manhood and he got into an altercation where a young lady came and pushed him and then he punched her square to the face, to say it like a proper Trini, he cuffed her down properly, well, you kind of deserve some trouble. There needs to be a kind of balance in the reciprocity. I mean, I understand the equal rights and equal lefts argument and all of that, but really and truly I am of the belief that men and women are different. Well, if he pushed her, no. I as I say, I can't know for sure because I don't know the entirety of a situation like that, but as for me, I don't see a problem with that. I don't see how that would be a problem if a young man pushed a woman who was trying to get physical with him. I don't see how that's a problem, but we are in a strange time in society right now. All right, let me see if my Facebook is going live and how that is going. Am I live over on my Facebook? Do you believe that marijuana is bad? What do you mean by bad? Do I believe that in excess marijuana would be bad? Then yes, I do believe that. I most certainly do believe that. But do I believe that it is bad by itself? Then no, I do not believe it is bad by itself. No, if that's the question you are asking. All right, let me see if I can run all of these live chats at the same time. Yeah, that's going to be a scene. Welcome to the live to everyone here. I am live now on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and TikTok. Yeah, I'm trying to be that overachiever tonight. Okay. It has the capacity to be bad and good, depends on how you use it exactly. I reach welcome King Kaka. But yeah, Nisi, as I was saying, I just don't see that. I don't see it being some massive negative thing for a young man to defend himself. And I don't think that is a bad thing if a young man defends himself. That's kind of what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to defend yourself to some extent. Okay, once you're inside of the live, as per usual, make sure you're hitting that like button. If you're in the live over on Facebook, I don't know if anyone, yes, there's at least one viewer in the Facebook live. Drop a comment, hit a like or something if you're over there, and let's get started at least with the news of the night that we'd like to talk about. All right, yeah, so we spoke last night about the unfortunate increase in domestic violence that we seem to be seeing, and some people are saying that it isn't indeed an increase, it is just that we are now finding out more, or it's just a temporary spike, etc., etc. Runs to Facebook. It's just that it's on my Facebook page, not my Facebook profile, my Facebook page, if any one of you are looking for it over on Facebook. But yes, we spoke about those instances where 4 women lost their lives. And in the 4 instances, as it is, to be honest, in most of the cases with women, and that's what, there are many things that make the violence against women a whole different ball game. There are many things that make it different. And one of the things that makes it different is that in most cases, when women are killed, very often, that's a domestic dispute. It's a domestic dispute. It's someone who knew this woman, and decided that I know this person, and nonetheless, because of whatever disagreement or grouse we have, I intend to cause her harm. Even in the case where it was where it was another woman who killed the woman, as in the case in Carnage this week, even in that case, and that case was interesting in and of itself, seeing as the purported reason behind all of that, the purported reason behind that killing was behind an ex that they both shared, and one murdered the other. Now one is dead, the other is going to sit in jail for a very long time, and the ex is free to go and find another. And I'm not saying that the man necessarily is unbothered by all of this, but he isn't really affected as much as they both will be. But yes, much of the time when there is violence against women, it comes from someone they know, whether it is woman or man. And that does make it a lot different. Also, I think it makes it a lot more solvable. And I think that's kind of where the crux of some of this issue lies. The fact that these attacks usually come from people they know makes it that crimes against women in such a nature should be something that is easier to stop and easier to solve. Hopefully. But that is not always the case. Okay, let me see how this Facebook stream is going. And it is going. All right. Yeah, so the first article we're getting into tonight has to do with the police response, because there was a statement made by one of the women who died, her family members, her brother and her father, and the statement was that they called the police so many times, 6 times I believe the father said that they called the police, and the police still never showed up. The police never showed up. 6 times they made these calls and the police never showed up. Oh, Joel Chow, it has been a while, sir. It has been a while. The individual should be fired. Well, we're going to see, because according to the police, that's not exactly what happened. The police are saying that they did show up when they were called. All right. Let's get to that. Police, we helped Trishana when reports were made. Mayaro police are denying that they failed to help Ellen Trishana Muhammad when she reported death threats a week before her lover chopped her to death, almost severing her neck. I believe that should be ex-lover inside of their Mr. Newspaper. They lie. Do they have the proof? Well, according to what the police are saying here, I suppose they will have the proof of what they are saying here. What they are saying here is that they got the reports and they responded to the reports. And the nature of how police are at least supposed to function is that everything police do is supposed to be recorded. Everything that police do at some point in time is supposed to be recorded. So if the police responded to her plea, then that would have been recorded. If she made a report, then that would have also been recorded. So I suppose all of these would have some trace of them happening. A senior officer at the station yesterday said the backlash from the public was unfortunate, especially since their area had the lowest crime rates and the highest detection rates. In an interview with Guardian Media, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Public Information Officer ASP Sheridan Hill confirmed that 2 reports had been lodged by Mohammed, 24, of Library Village, Guayari on May 6th and May 7th at the Mayaro police station. And on both occasions, the police responded. Young King is going at the police over there on TikTok. Let's say this: if you're a police officer and someone goes after your family member and you'll go after that person, police protect police. Okay, Young King, I understand what you are saying. If you're a police officer and this young lady was your family member, you would have gone out there and done something about this issue. You would have insisted that this man be brought to justice. You might have gone out there and beaten the man yourself. But can a police officer really, can a police officer do that for every woman that lodges a complaint about a man? Like, think about that, Young King. Have you ever broken a woman's heart? Have you ever heard the statement, hell hath no fury as a woman scorned? And last night, this is by no means belittling the reality that many women are violently killed by men. This is by no means belittling that reality. But last night we went through the facts. The fact that in most cases in domestic violence instances, women are more often the perpetrators. Now, it should be said regularly when something like that is said, it should be followed by the fact that in most cases, when it involves murder, by far men are more the perpetrators. So, if you're talking about actual instance of violence, women are more often the perpetrators. If you're talking about the most extreme instances, then by far men are the perpetrators. And that creates a dilemma that could be difficult to go around. Now, if you have it that when a woman comes in and says to a police officer that this man is harassing me, this man is abusing me, that instantly the police must go out there and find the man and arrest him and beat him up. Can you imagine the danger you are putting many men in? But still, how can a family member say 6 times? I understand what you are saying. I understand. What is your Facebook page? My Facebook page is Nathan Springer. Nathan Springer. My name is my Facebook page. And once you go over there, be sure to share it. I was supposed to share this and I did not. Let me see if I can find the link. For all of you inside of the live, of course, be sure to share it wherever you feel so obliged to. And to drop a like. Make sure you hit that like button. That like button does have an effect. It does have an effect. It allows the live to go out there to more people at a faster rate. It allows more people to see it. So, be sure to share the live and hit that like button also. They will always cover up the stupidness they do to protect their own unless get caught red-handed. I understand what you are saying there also, Young King. I regularly have my disagreements with how the police handle things, and I do believe that very often police do cover things up to protect themselves. That happens very regularly. I have no doubt about that. But I'm talking about in this specific instance. And I'm talking about whether this is something that can be changed and how it can be changed. Friday Forever 365 says, Rowley spoke about domestic violence some recent years back and some wanted to bash him for his comments. He did speak about domestic violence, but some of what he said was some more old school advice that some people really didn't like the tone of. But to me, I didn't have a problem with it in that sense. What he was basically saying was that, yes, you do look out for the women on the side of protecting them when they are in such an instance. But before you reach in such a position, the onus is on you really and truly to try your best. And granted, there are different reasons, and okay, I am not denying all of that. But the onus is on you to try your best to select people that are not going to end up in such a situation. No, it will never change because of the individuals that join and the older heads. I am not just talking about the police, Young King. It seems like you have a real disagreement with the police, but I'm talking further than that. I'm talking about the reality of domestic situations. What do you want the police to do in such a situation? What do you expect from the police? Are they supposed to instantly, at the first call, go out there and scream at whoever the woman claims is harassing her? Are they supposed to instantaneously go out there and arrest someone if the woman says the person is harassing them? Is that what is supposed to happen? Or are they supposed to hold off on that and have a little investigation first? Sometimes it's not about the love, it's about the economics, and that is very true. That is very true. I might even say that maybe in the majority of instances, those relationships have a strong economic component. And especially if you're talking about in more rural districts or in according to what country you're looking at, it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult. If you're in a country where the man holds all the property, or if you're in a community where it generally leans that way, the property and the power in this community is held patriarchally, the man holds everything, then for this woman to leave isn't just about her not getting physically abused anymore. It's also about putting herself in a much more disadvantaged financially position. And similarly, on the flip side, if it is the man in the situation, and as we have seen by the statistics so far, if it's the man and the woman is being more abusive, the woman is regularly beating this man, and he feels himself bubbling with rage, and instead of leaving, he doesn't want to leave to create that scene, so he stays there and just takes all of that. Eventually, the reality is this man may reach a explosion point, and who knows what may happen now. Now, granted, if this man does turn around and do something violent, all the harassment he got is no excuse for it. The reasoning is you should have left. But the reality is he would have stayed there for reasons beyond just the obvious. And that's the whole problem. That is the whole problem. That is actually the problem that I am trying to highlight. That so often when we speak about this, we think about it only in the simplest, most straightforward way that, okay, this is just so simple, this is something so easy to solve. If the police would just, and if this person would just, and all this one needed to do was just. And I understand how it could feel simple like that. But when you actually look into the reality of the situation, as it goes deeper, you get the understanding that when it comes to domestic situations, very often things do get a lot more complex. All right, let's read further into this very same story, and I think some of the complexity would start to come out there. Giving details from the station diary report, so as Young King was questioning before, this is the police giving details out of their station diary for proof that they did respond to the young lady's call and the young lady's request. Giving details from the station diary report, ASP Hill said around 1:05 p.m. on Friday, 6th May, Mohammed, 24, arrived at the station and reported she was with name called for the past 4 months She reported around 9:30 p.m. on Monday, 2nd May, the name called, accused her of being unfaithful, grabbed her hand, and dealt her a slap to the face. He made threats to kill her. Hill further said a statement was taken from her and she sought medical attention at Miaro Health Facility. He added 2 police officers conducted inquiries and accompanied Miss Mohammed, where they assisted her in retrieving her clothes, which were left outside. She was escorted to her mother's home, which is nearby. She was advised to obtain a protection order. So the police have evidence of this thus far. The police have evidence that the young lady did come to the station and make that report. They have evidence that they took the report. They have evidence that 2 officers accompanied her to the home and got her clothing and carried her to her mother's home. They have some evidence of what they are saying. So remember, for those of you who are now joining, we are speaking about the police and their response to what the family members were saying, that the police were not doing enough to protect the young lady who unfortunately was murdered by an ex-lover, apparently. And this is the police response to it. They are saying they did respond. And I am looking at some of their response here. And my question is, what more can we expect from the police? What more do we expect from the police? What more do we want from the police? When we're looking at these domestic situations, and very regularly, we hear people say the police should do more. And I agree, the police should do more. There must be some way for us to protect these people. But what exactly do we think that more would be? Hill said around 10:45 p.m. on May 7th, she again reported that the man threatened to kill her and her children. The police acted promptly. At 12:30 p.m. on May 7th, 2 police officers went to the home of the suspect and advised him of the death threats and cautioned him to stay away from Mohammed, Hill added. That's what the police did. 2 officers went to the man's home, spoke to him about the threats, said they heard about the threats, and they cautioned him about it. What more should they have done? Friday Forever asks, are these protection orders, or do they work because they are being breached? Well, here's the thing. If an order is being breached at the moment a man is going to harm the lady, then what is that piece of paper going to do? We spoke about this last night, that very often what you find is that when these instances occur, when these very unfortunate and very horrendous instances occur, very often the man is at his end. Because the man who murdered this young lady, he promptly after he murdered her, walked out to the main road, flagged down a police vehicle, and gave himself up. And if this person is so at the end, and many of the other cases you see when the teacher murdered his wife, he killed himself soon after. That's very regularly what you see happening. These men are at their end, and if they are at their end, a piece of paper, these protection orders, isn't going to do much. Because the idea of a protection order is that works on someone who doesn't want to go to prison, and someone who has some concern for what the police can do them. If you have no concern for what the police can do you, for example, the example we spoke about yesterday when we spoke about this is how often you hear trainees say, I could go and sit down in jail. And what that statement is saying is that a protection order wouldn't work. That is saying that what the police can do to me has no effect. And if someone is at that position, there really is nothing that the police can do. Because the vast majority of any action taken by police is taken in hindsight. Police take action after something is done. That's how police action generally goes on. They take action after something is done. After it is done, the police go and arrest somebody or investigate to see if they can catch someone. Why don't they go in a room and video record the briefing? What briefing are you talking about? I don't know what you are talking about there. And in the instance like you were talking about there, what do you want them to do? Arrest him. They were supposed to arrest him on the say-so of his ex. That's what you are saying there. Now, in the end of it, now we know that this man indeed was a murderous, crazy person, and he should stay in prison and rot there for the rest of his life. Granted, great. But at the point in time when this was done, how are the police to know what stage this is at? The woman comes, she tells them, this man has threatened me and my children. They go to the man, they say, we have heard that you have issued this and this threat. We are warning you that this is within our view now. If you do so and so and so, you would be arrested. If you contravene this, if you go within this much distance, XYZ. You are now hereby cautioned. Bam. Good. What more were you, did you really expect the police to arrest him in that instant? Are the police supposed to do regular visits to the victim's residence? Like a way they take you in a room, anybody could write something in a book. I'm not sure exactly what you are talking about. Have no, okay. Well, then failure is systematic. The court, the police, the people who make the laws aren't working. That is the thing, Blue Zabuka. And that is actually what I'm going to get at least by the end of all of this. We recognize that the failure of this is, yes, systemic, but the solution for it is not in the government, in the state system. The solutions for this, as nearly everything I talk about is a social, a societal, a cultural solution. It's a cultural solution. You cannot expect the police on the first instant to go when someone's ex tells them this man has threatened me, to go and arrest the man. Listen, you are saying that because you are emotional now, thinking about the reality of how this situation ended. But if this is something in the flip side, where it does occur very often, where the woman is an abuser too, if it's something like that, and she's using the system as part of her apparatus to help abuse this man, and you are saying that on a woman's call, the police are going to arrest this man without any evidence. On a woman's call, the police are going to arrest a man. That doesn't make sense. If you are saying, well, if the woman recorded the video evidence of the man harassing her and then showed that to the police, well, then that may have had more effect. But I'm not sure video evidence could be taken in court either way. So you need evidence. That's the way these things work. And without evidence, you do not want a system. You do not want to actually live in a system where you could be held without evidence. That's scary. Blessed Night, can you sig trigger? I love that name. So, what more should the police have done? Meanwhile, Muhammad's brother Isaiah yesterday said he was heartbroken over his sister's death and did not want discord with the police, especially when everyone was in deep grief. Just before she died, Isaiah said Muhammad gave her life to Christ. He admitted that his sister had a difficult time with men. Her first relationship was licks. She used to tell me how the first one would beat her, Isaiah said. After the relationship failed, Muhammad, 25, relied on Isaiah and her father, Steve Jones, to help her care for her three daughters aged 6, 3, and 18 months. She had a hard life. Men used to inject fear into her. I work as a mechanic and I'm a skilled painter. I would do any job I get to make money to help her mind those children, Isaiah said. 2 months ago, Isaiah said Muhammad started a relationship with a neighbor who had recently moved into the Library Village, Guayari community. He was 15 years older than her and had lived outside the community for years before moving back. Isaiah said when Muhammad began staying over at the neighbor's shack, he realized she was getting involved with trouble. She used to sleep there at night, but come home during the day to cook, and the children used to stay by us. In the nights when she go with them there to sleep, but it wasn't nice for the children because he used to cuss them until they didn't want to stay there anymore, Isaiah said. Listen, when you read something like this, when you look at something like this, if you're rich, they deal with you proper and swift, and if you're poor, they take the time and just talk. Sir Young King, I understand the grouse you have with the police. I do have some problems with them, but I think you are not actually correct in this instance. Domestic violence might be one where I would say that the rich and the poor are treated very similarly. The former Attorney General had allegations of such nature about him floating around, and the allegations of the police treatment with those allegations were the same. A former minister in the government was alleged to have beat his outside woman because his outside woman was trying to tell him to treat his second outside woman better. He beat her in Grand Bazaar car park and nothing came of it. So what are you talking about wealthy and they treat with you better? The women were wealthy in those instances. It has nothing to do with wealth. I think the thing with domestic violence cases, I wouldn't put that blame on the police because I think a lot of those cases are much more complex than a lot of us are willing to admit it being. Yes, Mr. Canute Sig Trigger, my special talent, one of the things that makes me seem so smart is just that my memory is relatively good. I can pull certain things out of memory well, so I didn't forget. I remember a lot from those very entertaining years. Those years were very entertaining. There was a lot of stuff. There are limits to the police, I agree. Now, look at this story. And I am not speaking ill of the dead here, and I hope everyone listening to me understands the context in which I am saying all of this. But look at the rollout of this story. This tells of a societal problem. This is not a policing problem. This young lady, her first relationship was domestic violence. It seems like it was domestic violence from early into her first relationship, which started in her late teens apparently. That first relationship bore 3 children, even though it had domestic violence. And obviously, those 3 children were not being minded by the first abusive father, because the brother is saying that he and her father were helping her to mind these 3 children. And then from that first abusive relationship, she comes home, she gets out of it, and quickly falls straight into another one. I am from the glorious country, the Twin Isle Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, sir. Thank you very much. Anyway, yes, you see very quickly, apparently, she ends right back up into a relationship similar to that. And look at the surroundings of this relationship, and you would see this is a societal problem. There is a societal problem here. Look at it. Look at what the brother is saying here. 2 months into the relationship, and this man is crazy enough to have murdered her. This man was 15 years her senior. She's 25. That makes this man 40 years old. This man is a newcomer to her community. This man is living in a shack. At 40 years, he has just moved into a community, living in a shack. What does that tell you? A 40-year-old man living in a shack in Guaya. If I saw that man, I am telling you, as a Trinidadian, knowing how the criminal situation is in Trinidadian, if I were a resident of Guaya and I'm living here all the time, and I just see this man come and move into Guaya and living in a shack in the back by me, I'm going to say very likely he's hiding from someone in some other area. That would be my first assumption, to be very honest. That would be my first assumption. And then she goes with this man. However that happens, this man woos her. The man hates her children and curses the children so much that they cannot spend the night there. All this is happening in under 2 months. There's obviously an underlying problem here that the police could not have solved. What would cause a young lady to be attracted to 2 successive abusive relationships? There is a problem there. There's a problem there that isn't the police's fault, and that the police obviously cannot solve. How does that... Listen, Nisi, I always wonder this. You as a woman, you would have to answer this to me. Because, listen, I'm watching... I always watch this. This is something I very regularly watch. I watch in communities, you see some of these young men living in a little shack somewhere. I do not think it is that Ricky Mortimer's, to be very honest. I honestly do not think it's that. These young men living in a little shack somewhere barely have 2 coins to rub together for themselves, and they get some young lady to come walking inside of this road and sleep inside of that abomination, overrun with grass. Like, the guy isn't even keeping around the house tidy and neat. This guy obviously has zero care about anything around him. So how are you falling for this man? How can you sleep there, wake up in the morning, put back on the same clothes you came with last night? You can't take a bath because he doesn't have running water, and walk out with your dirty skin and walk out the road and travel from there to go home in your good mother's house. I don't understand that. Some young lady would have to explain that to me. Personally, when I look at things like that, I think that there are developmental problems. There are problems in parenting that caused a lot of this. The problem started somewhere very early in this person's life, and it skewed the way they viewed relationships. So that's what is happening now, because that is insane. But we do see it happening. But that's not a police problem. The reality is that isn't a police problem. Now, and there's another article about similar in the same incident, where you see even a better view into this young lady's traumatizing life. Victim hid in taxi on day before murder. On Wednesday, the day the 24-year-old Ellen Krishana Muhammad was hacked to death at the family's home in Guaya, an evangelist was waiting for her in San Fernando to give her stationery supplies for her children. Muhammad never showed up, and all calls to her cell phone went unanswered. David Moyne of the Upper Claxton Bay Pentecostal Church in Prance Gardens later learned of the murder on social media. Muhammad and a male relative, right, we know that. I was hoping it was not her, Moyne said on Thursday. Moyne, who is also a taxi driver, recalled that he met her on Tuesday, the day before she was killed, at Sapero Street in San Fernando. She stopped the car and got in, but she ducked down, almost under the dashboard in the front seat, hiding from someone. Moyne said he initially assumed she was a secondary school student. That's to show you the age of this young lady, at least how she looked also. When I dropped off the other passengers, we started talking. She said she had 3 children and was from Guaya. She came to the city to see about birth papers for the children, Moyne said. She told me about her problem. She said she did not want a man to see her in the car because he might be in San Fernando. He had been abusive to her. Moyne said he started to pray for her, and she wrote her name and number on a paper. I did not charge her. I dropped her off at Library Corner, and she went for a taxi headed to Princess Town, he said. Moyne said he loves to help others and offered her stationery supplies for the children. Mohammed was the mother of 3 girls, yes. On Monday night, I called to make sure she reached home safely. We talked for about 10 minutes. I prayed for her on the phone, and she said she was coming to San Fernando on Wednesday to collect the items. I prayed and prayed for her, so all hope is not lost. Now, this does line up with something, actually, because the brother said that he believes she gave her life to Christ before she died. So this actually does line up with what it seems like the brother was saying. The vast majority of cases arise from childhood trauma. Most people live what they know. No one deserves that kind of life serious. No one does. Now, here's the kind of scary part in this to me. The part that kind of wanted to break my heart, as it were, when I read this story. Reading this and seeing her, how she was hiding in San Fernando. She was afraid for someone to see her in the car. That means very likely when she was in on the tongue, she had to be scurrying in and out of stores because she was paranoid about the danger that she was in. Here's the kind of really, really heartbreaking part with this. Muhammad's brother, Isaiah Muhammad, believed the man his sister told the brother about was not the suspect, but another male relative who lives in the Williamsville district. He was a threat to her too. He and the suspect were always injecting fear in my sister, Isaiah said. He said Muhammad was a victim of domestic violence for many years. She shared an on and off relationship with a man for over 6 years. The man she was hiding from in San Fernando was not even the one that ended up murdering her. She was paranoid for her life from multiple men, and obviously the paranoia was not unwarranted. What a horrific way to live. What a truly horrific way to live. The thing is, even if these women leave, sometimes there's nowhere for them to go. That may be true, Sometimes there isn't anywhere for them to go. But even in this situation, you look at this, and she left the first one. The first one didn't find her, at least up until then. But she went and found someone else to fit into that same abuser position and do the very same thing to her again, and this time end in her murder. So I take chances, call your parents and stay inside. Simple. Well, the truth is, she was murdered at her home. The other lady who was murdered along with her child, she was murdered in a hiding place she was calling home for the moment. So what exactly did you expect them to do? What more were they supposed to do at that point in time? Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't think at that point in time there's a great amount that the police can do. I don't think at that point in time there's a great that even the lady may be able to do. She could try and hide, but if this man is intent on ending his reality and ending whatever he thinks is bothering him at this very moment, if he has reached his wit's end and he has nothing left to lose, then it's very difficult to stop that person. You need to heal before you move on so you don't attract the same kind of people. Parents and guardians have to model good relationships for their children so when they get old, that is very true. This is from the parents' point. It is from the parents' point. And I think because it is a problem that the state, that the police, that the government cannot solve, when we expect them to solve it, it's kind of an unfair expectation that is always going to be broken. We are always going to be disappointed by that expectation because the police cannot stop something like this. What about the 56-year-old woman from Diego Martin who died from a domestic dispute? We spoke about that last night also. And last night I did cover the reality that a lot of these men are just horrible men. And the thing is, the solution to a lot of it is these men are supposed to die virgins, to put it that way. To put it bluntly, these kind of men that are not able to hold their aggression and violence in check are supposed to, in regular society, die virgins. They are not supposed to see or feel the embrace of a woman. The problem is that very often they do, and then they father children, and the children that come up sometimes with these same violent men look at these violent men as the picture of a father and the picture of a male, and they go finding some of these same loser men to reproduce with for the next generation, and it perpetuates that cycle. But the solution isn't the police stopping them. The solution is the woman. That's where I believe a lot of the solution should lie. And now, Dr. Rowley got in trouble when he said some of this, and choose your relationships wisely. Now, I'm trying to add a little nuance into that statement. When a woman is already in that situation, I would please arrest this man. Please arrest this man, get rid of this man. But the solution is not the men, Fab Khalifa, because you cannot rid the world of psychopaths. You cannot rid the world of violent men. People have been trying to do that for millennia. And up till now, we still haven't figured out a way how to get rid of all the violent psychopaths in our society. The way you secure yourself is you make sure that you do not end up with any of these kind of men. And that's on the woman's side. That's the most important thing. As a parent, what you do is you train anyone around you, you train any young lady to understand what a violent psychopath man looks like. That jealousy you think is really hot and attractive in the beginning is going to be hot and bothersome and murderous in the end. And you of course train your boys, your young men, that you do not regardless of whatever is done to you, the solution is that you exit amicably. That's what you do. Violence isn't how you solve any of these situations. It is not going to solve it. That's the solution. The solution is in parenting. There isn't anything further that can be done when these violent psychopaths are already in the society. The only thing you could do then is throw them in jail, and you could only throw them in jail after they have done something. That's the strange thing. Jail is only for people who have already committed a crime. If the violent psychopath has not committed a crime, you can know he is a violent psychopath. You can be sure. Listen, if there was some way for us to predict every single man in the society that is going to be a violent psychopath, if there was a way and we could paint them all purple, those purple painted men cannot be thrown in jail until they actually do something. So I can assure you, if we could have painted them purple, what everyone in this society would have done is they would have stayed clear of all the purple painted men as much as possible. And I think that there is an important part. But the government can supply a better social safety net, better education, access to birth control, etc. I agree, Blue Zabuka, very much. Sometimes men only show that side when the woman done fall in love with him. And Fab Khalifa says exactly. I agree, and I don't agree at the same time. I don't think anyone is a perfect liar. And I agree that many of these violent people only show some of these tendencies after a while. I agree. Now, some of this should be understood in the context. I hope everyone here saw yesterday's video where we spoke about the context of the reality, because when we're talking about domestic violence, we have to speak about it realistically. Otherwise, the conversation gets skewed and people start to talk in emotions, and people start to talk in what they think and what they feel and their personal situation, and it doesn't line up with reality. Reality is women perpetrate instances of domestic violence more often than men. Reality. Fact. So, when we're talking about the conversation, here about all of this, our conversation has to be something like, we should be teaching young people, both men and women, and especially young women also, that violence has no place in a relationship. If you enter a relationship and you as the woman treat violence as any kind of outlet inside of the relationship. When you feel wronged, you exert violence on this man. You commit violence on this man, and you do it regularly. And you think your excuse is, well, it doesn't really hurt him, but it is still violence. And you are creating a toxic relationship. You are creating a relationship where violence is the currency that you trade in. So if you trade in that violent currency and this man becomes angered enough and he decides to trade back some with you, the reality is that also, just as the fact is, and I keep reiterating these two facts and juxtaposing them together, the reality is, yes, women do commit domestic violence more regularly than men. In every instance where domestic violence reaches, well, not every, in the vast majority of instances where domestic violence reaches the most extreme violent situations, such as murder, men are by far the perpetrators. That's the reality. It have a saying, see me and come live with me is two different things. Are you going to ignore those red flags and follow blindly? If we don't train boys to be good men, we'll always have problems. Same for women. Mothers are growing up men, which is wrong. I agree. Violence breeds violence. No matter what, they more need their father. And while they try their best, is in right? What about the man background? He probably was abused in the past. That is very true. That is very true. A lot of those men, I remember, the millennial generation, I know the FBI, Criminal Minds. Yes, Criminal Minds, I know, has a lot of fans in the millennial generation. And that was something I was grateful for Criminal Minds for. Especially in some of the later episodes, they began showing you that nearly every single one of these perpetrators were actually a victim. And if you look at it from another angle, they are both victim and perpetrator. We live in a society where violence is normalized early in life, cloaked as discipline. If you are talking about corporal punishment, I understand what you are saying, but I don't think that is the reason we see violent parents. If you look at the houses with the most domestic violence perpetrated against women, it isn't something where they are the women who engage in regular corporal punishment the most. It isn't a matter of corporal punishment. It's a matter of indisciplined violence. Usually, generally speaking, to be very honest, it's a matter of general indiscipline. And general indiscipline inevitably leads to violence. You see, it's like this. It's like the Russia versus United States. Yes, I'm drawing this wild example. It's the Russia versus United States on Ukraine. Fab Khalifa, we went through those studies. I wish you were here. You can go on YouTube, and I went through the very studies that they quote to use that statistic that corporal punishment breeds violence. We went through those studies. The actual study, the main one that they quote. I scrolled through and we read through the studies and went through what they said. What they actually said is, first of all, they were self-reported, so that makes the entire thing thrown out on a scientific basis. But secondly, they co-opted multiple data streams into one grouping, and that skewed the data. So all abusers were considered as doing corporal punishment. So the group of people think of it like a Venn diagram. You have corporal punishment as discipline, then you have people who just beat up on their children. And in this study, all hitting was grouped into one group. So all who did corporal punishment, anyone who was an abuser, was also considered as someone in the corporal punishment grouping. So obviously someone who was an abuser, their child is going to turn out horribly. Look, if they separated, and in this study, in the very same study, the scientists who did this study said that they did not separate for the use of corporal punishment as general discipline, and if they did separate for that, there would be different realities. What is your solution to this problem? What's your take? I kept saying it. I keep saying it over and over and over and over. It's a cultural and societal solution. The solution is be a good mother. The solution is be a good father. The solution is be as good of whichever cog in the wheel of society that you are. That is the actual solution. The solution that everyone hopes for is that we would somehow be able to stain our finger red, vote for someone, put them in the position as government, as in governance, and they are going to somehow write a law that is magically going to make everyone in the country disciplined and behave properly. That is insane, and it is never going to happen. That's not how it works. The government is there to hold in and govern a society that already has societal discipline created by the cultural structure in the society. What is the parameters of definition of corporal punishment? That was the problem in the study. If you're talking about corporal, and the study did, you could, I have this study on my YouTube. We did that video. I think Blue Zabuka was here while I was going through that video. It may that we are on Mindful Live 75, so that may be in the 60s somewhere there. It was not that long ago. You can go back on my YouTube channel, look for corporal punishment, Nathan Springer Mindful something, and the full discussion there. I'm yet to see what is force, amount, or lashes for each age. Or you want a direct definition that over 50 lashes per day is abuse, under isn't. I am not sure. In that study, they did actually specify what they considered as a face, a lash, etc., etc., etc. But such things are difficult to study. That's why those studies are difficult. So to say they have proven it in a study is actually incorrect. They have not proven it in a study. And what they have proven in studies is that abusive people who grow up in abusive homes, inevitably, usually perpetuate the cycle. That is true. But you can speak to people who grew up having gotten corporal punishment at the level of general discipline, and they don't go on to perpetuate abusive homes. So the abused people produce abuse doesn't seem to line up with corporal punishment, as the vast majority of the middle to upper middle class to wealthy have gone through corporal punishment. Corporal punishment has been much more of the rule than the norm over the entirety of mankind's history. Now, if you are of the view that mankind is an animal that evolved from animals, you go through the evolution of animals, and corporal punishment is ubiquitous in the animal kingdom. The smarter animals get, the more you see their parents engaging in various forms of corporal punishment. So I don't even understand how this is an argument. I don't understand. To me, I don't understand how it seems like some people cannot differentiate the difference between abuse and corporal punishment. The idea of corporal punishment is not the same thing as the idea of abuse. The idea of corporal punishment is to engage some amount of physical pain for someone to associate this amount of discomfort and slight pain with this action. It's an association exercise. Common human psychology, common animal psychology. Obviously, you can go overboard. The intent is not to damage the child. So if you're damaging the child, you're abusing the child. The intent is to allow the child to understand there is a final punishment to this. And the final punishment to this is is physical discomfort. That's why my ex hit me. I am sorry for laughing at that. It was just the timing of it in what I was saying. I understand what you're saying, and there are men who believe that and men who operate like that. But that's not the same thing. Like, I am glad you said that. You said the very same thing that I was going to say. That's the problem. Like he was your parent. He was not your parent. You are not a child. A parent and a child is not the same thing. An adult and a child is not the same thing. A child does not have the same brain that an adult has. They learn differently from us. They learn faster than us. They don't have the same societal understandings and understanding of cues that we do. They have a more naturally aggressive disposition than us. As I've said, to me, the part of the reasoning that many of the psychologists once believed that you must never hit a child because violence is going to beget violence. You are going to inflict aggression onto this child that is going to teach them aggression. That comes from the incorrect tabula rasa belief, that where they once believed that humans are blank slates. Humans are blank. Whatever, a human is born blank, and whatever you put into human, whatever you put into a human, they're going to learn. So if you hit someone, they are going to learn violence. But that's not the reality. Studies have now, this is actual scientific study. These aren't questions asked to people to self-report. This is actual scientific studies, and actual scientific studies have proven now that, I keep saying this is one of the ones that I like to harp on. The most aggressive human you are going to find is a 2-year-old male who has never gotten licks yet. No one has shown them the brutal reality of the Tambran whip. No one has shown them the trauma of a hand on the buttock. No one has done that. And they learn violence and aggression all on their own. The key of discipline is that you're trying to discipline this aggression and violence out of this child so that they can function in the society that they are going to be in when they are adults. That's the key of discipline. And I am not saying that you have to beat your child or hit your child for them to be disciplined. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that I believe corporal punishment isn't abuse, and it can have a place in discipline as being a final measure for every child to understand that in reality, if I do something that is out of line with what I should do, the ending is going to be painful for me. That is a lesson that children need to understand. When you do something wrong, it isn't just a matter of mommy telling me no. No, there are painful consequences to certain actions in life. Do you think a father should hit his daughter? My thing is, why can't corporal punishment be used on these men who killed these women to domestic? Some of it is used. You can. Do you know that there are strokes that are that can be issued by the court? The court can order strokes with the cat o' nine tail. But do you know, Ricky Mortimer's, holding your brother down is by definition corporal punishment? Anything that you physically do to them that causes them physical discomfort is by definition corporal punishment. So holding them down is corporal punishment too. People like living in dream world. Some people need to burn to learn, and that's where discipline is important in every aspect of life. That's where discipline teaches them, and that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And certain people are different. There are different children. There are different people. As I've said, I don't think you need to, you must beat your child for them to be disciplined. That's by no means what I'm saying. What I am saying is that in the realm of corporal punishment, you need to have something final for children to understand this. And I think bulldozer parents in modern times are doing an injustice to the new generation. Bulldozer parents are the parents that want to push everything out the way. They think their job as a parent, discipline comes from the word disciple. You teach by example. You teach by instruction. You teach by incentive. You don't only teach by discipling. There are many different ways to teach. Teaching isn't one way. And I believe one of the words in either teacher or instructor came from a word that meant to beat. So if you're talking about the meaning of words, parents need to learn their children and know when to discipline their children. Yes, as I was saying, the idea that the parent's job is to move away the consequences for all parents' actions, move away the consequences for all of the children's actions, it actually makes the children incapable of functioning on their own, and it makes them have an incorrect view of reality itself. A lot of people in this modern generation believe that they can stop the consequences of reality. They believe if they spit in the sky, it is not going to fall in their eye, because every time they spit in the sky, their parent keeps coming and catching the spit. Oh no, little Johnny, don't let that spit touch you in the eye. No, that is horrible for you. And Johnny spits in the sky again, and you catch it again, and they get the idea that spitting in the sky doesn't result in spit falling in your eye, if you understand my analogy. And we end up now with a generation who doesn't want to, nobody wants to plant the corn, but everybody wants to read the band. I have to go down into the conscious lyrics here to teach this lesson. We're ending up with a generation that doesn't want to plant the corn and wants to read the band because they grew up not understanding that you must plant the corn to get the consequences in the band. That's what the bulldozer parents do. That's what the bulldozer parents do. And to get controversial, even when you go down into some of the gender ideology in modern time, I have to be careful how I go through some of this. The gender dysphoria that causes transgenderism is a real mental condition. If you don't want to call it an illness, it is a real mental condition. It is predominantly found in men. However, the gender craze that is happening right now is actually happening more with young girls. Because what is happening is many young girls, when they reach puberty, they are seeing some of the difficulty that there is in being a woman, and they're saying, you know what? Nah, I'm going to be a man instead. Here's the thing. That has been a part of women, young ladies, girls maturing since girls have been girls. There's an actual term for it called penis envy. I don't know how many of you have ever heard that term. A technical term, penis envy. Google it if you want. Where women, especially young girls, when they reach to puberty, they reach the point and they recognize, wait now, this girl business ain't just straightforward. And then they look and they see their brothers at the age of 10 still running around and playing life innocently like nothing has changed. There's an interesting statistic that has found that women and men, girls and boys, have generally the same level of neuroticism. Neuroticism meaning that your perception of negative things, how receptive you are to feeling negative emotions, neuroticism. So women and girls and boys have the same level, except when they reach puberty. At the point of puberty, women's levels of neuroticism sky up, and it never gets back down to a level amount. And it could just be that young girls reach puberty and they recognize through a literally bloody situation that life is real, and if I do certain things right now, there would be consequences to these actions. And they become very conscious of that reality. And some women, fully understandable at that young age, are like, you know what? I would rather not have what I have and have what they have, because they look like they're having life easier. And if you as a parent, at that point, you as a bulldozer parent see that my job is to stop this consequence of reality from happening, make it turn around, and I would give my daughter puberty blockers so she doesn't have to go through this. Here's the reality that comes knocking. Yeah, you stop your daughter and turn her into a boy at 12. She becomes barren and impotent. She removes her mammary glands. Then at 25, when some of the fog of puberty lifts, and she wants to, and the maternal urge starts to kick in, because there's nothing you could do to stop that now. There are instincts built into the humankind, that the instinct has to be there for us to, reproduce and keep going as humanity. The maternal instinct hits in at 25. The girl recognizes, I cannot reverse this process, and reality still hits them. You cannot escape reality. That's the cruelty of, instinct is hormones. Blue Zabuka, to me that's picking at the nitty-gritty. What is instinct? What causes an animal to have the urge to do what the animal does? Some form of chemical reaction inside of the animal's body. We call it hormones. There may be other complex hormones that we may not even fully understand totally, but it's something. I am not saying there isn't a cause for it. There's obviously a cause for it, but it is there and it is going to happen. And you cannot stop reality. That's just the difficulty about it. I wanted to get into even the abortion discussion, but I never saw Rhea again for the week. Rhea ducking from me, man. But to me, even part of the abortion discussion is some of that. Consequences to actions. There's a consequence to unprotected sexual activity. The consequence is possible pregnancy. And even if abortion is legal or not, that consequence cannot actually be removed. Regardless of how many people would like to say like an abortion should be like nothing, you're just removing a clump of cells, they're lying to you. They're lying to you. It never is like that. And the vast majority of women who do it are traumatized permanently because of it. So there is a consequence regardless of what. Reality has consequences, and there's nothing you can do to prevent the consequences from happening. Do you think the mental man killed the 2-year-old? Yes or no? I don't know that. I don't know that. If I am to assume, I would assume no. It doesn't seem so. That's the problem. Everyone seems to want to have their own truth apart from the real truth. All right. That's all I have for now, folks. Any further questions or topics you want to discuss? I wonder if anyone viewed the Facebook Live. I wasn't even watching over there much. Any further questions or points before I dive out? What was the... I don't know if to feel hurt about that. What was the topic? What's your take on that matter? On what matter? So many question marks. Elizabeth Natasha Surratt, you asked a question. The topic was originally talking about the police reactions and what can be done to stop the domestic issues. Every fetus is female until after some time it picks what gender it wants to take on. Is this facts? Yes and no. It's according to what you determine as female. Every fetus, by and large, has the anatomical structure of a female at the beginning. But every fetus isn't female because a fetus has the chromosome of male or female from the point that the egg and the sperm fuse. The sperm gives it either an X chromosome or a Y chromosome, whichever one the sperm, whichever one the sperm gives it, makes it either male or female. So at that point, it is either male or female already. But the secondary, is that secondary or primary sexual characteristics are not formed till a couple weeks in, when it is differentiated from which organ it is going to actually be. There can be problems in the cell duplication during that process that creates sometimes some different mixes of organs, so you could have hermaphrodites, etc., etc., etc. But either way, they usually are chromosomally male or female. What do I think about that topic? I spoke at length about that topic. If you go over to YouTube, Nathan Springer on YouTube, you would see several videos. My live from Wednesday night, I believe that. No, not Wednesday night. Tuesday night was on that very topic. Now joined. Well, yes, I said what we were talking about. The 2-year-old, I didn't find the Facebook Live. Well, I don't know what was going on with the Facebook Live. I'll have to work on that. What's your take on the 2-year-old matter? The 2-year-old matter. I spoke about that at length in those videos. You can go there. Did you talk about the pressing charges against mother? Are they press? I didn't read that. That's news to me. If they're pressing charges against the mother, I didn't see anything about that. They are the physical attributes, but that what is more important is what is happening in the brain chemistry. Brain chemically in chemistry. I'm not sure what was the finish of that. Any further questions? Or just asking if I think they should. No, I do not. I do not. At least with the let me rephrase that. At least with the evidence I have seen thus far, I do not think the country would be made a better place by punishing that mother. Thank you, Elizabeth Natasha Surratt. That is appreciated. You and I need to have a serious podcast. Well, young king, sometimes, my life, beautiful topic, very engaging. Thank you, Nigel Wilbur. What secondary school did you attend? Modsec. Couva. What's that? What do they call that now? Couva East? Was Couva Government Secondary when I passed for that school way back. We'll talk. I have a very interesting SEA story to tell you. Very interesting SEA story. Fun times. Have you ever discussed the pluralism debate happening? Pluralism in what sense? I went MUDSEC. Which MUDSEC? I suppose that would be MUDSEC South. I think they should charge her and the neighbor, but I'll have to explain another day. Yeah, you may have to talk about that. Just the snippet. We talk about that. Sometime one of you who are in this chat remind me that I have to hit you all this story about me and SEA, and it's a funny story. A story that would encourage you to check over your work. They didn't know there was another San Fernando. Yeah, they call Couva Government Secondary MUDSEC, and they call San Fernando MUDSEC also. We need to talk about that. Yeah. The gender identification thing. No, I don't think I've ever spoken specifically about that gender identification and the pluralism in it, because it isn't really a pressing issue in Trinidad and Tobago. And to be very honest, I do not really see it as soon becoming a pressing issue in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think that it may reach here as easily and as soon. At one point in time, I was very worried that it might, but I think they overplayed their hand over in the United States. And if they have lost J.K. Rowling, who is by and large as progressive and pushing the bounds of everything in reality as possible, if they lost her, well, let's have that SEA talk Sunday. I don't do a live on Sunday. My lives are on weekdays, 9:30 starting, generally speaking. You can feel free to tune in every weekday 9:30 for the Mindful Lives. Are you from Shogunas, the Shogunas region? Are you a parent? Isn't that a question? Maybe. Yeah. Monday night then, I will see you all. Peace. It was nice. I hope you were educated, informed, or entertained. Nice having you here. Laters.